Aloha. Today I want to talk about our skills assessments, how they started, when they started, how we developed them, how the whole programs work. About 30 or so years ago in my consulting work, I was asked to do an evaluation of a group of mechanics at a dealership. There were well over 100 mechanics and there was no simple in-place evaluation or assessment that could be used. So I developed one. It started from about 100 questions, multiple choice, and then it narrowed down and I broke it into the sectors of the machine: engine, transmission, hydraulics, electrical, you know the drill. Well, we had each of the technicians fill out these assessments themselves. Then I had each of the supervisors do the same thing for each of their people. Then we compared the two. Then we pulled in the wages that each of the technicians had received. At the end of that rather laborious task, I sat down with the management and the supervision and asked them to rank them as to who the best was all the way down. Of course, there were varying opinions, but that's to be expected. What I then did was compared the wages that were paid to what the rankings were that the management had given me. And to nobody's surprise, there wasn't much of a correlation. That started me down this path of wanting to come up with some manner of objective tool with which we could evaluate a person's skills. That would be something that the leader, the manager, the team leader, whomever, and the employee could both fill out and then could sit down and discuss the differences that they had with each other's view. It was an important starting point. Now, that's 30 some odd years ago. In the classrooms, as time passed, I started using what I called a device called 5 Things, where I would ask the people that were in the classroom to make a list of 5 things that were a pain to do in their job, that would be better if they could change it for them, that if they could make changes to the operations, it would improve things for the company. And we talked about this for many years, and what was remarkable about that little exercise was the fact that there were many items on all 3 lists. It would improve operations, it would make the employee's job better, and it was a pain to do. My question was always the same: why don't you change that? Why don't you fix that? It's part and parcel of the same developmental approach on the assessments that I used. Back when I was supervising people at dealerships, I used to have the habit of walking around and about twice a year asking everybody 3 questions. What do you like that I'm doing and you want me to continue? What don't you like that I'm doing and you want me to stop? And what is it that I'm doing that doesn't make any difference to you? This allowed me to evaluate what I was doing, how I was doing it, and how effectively I was being able to communicate with my team. As we evolved into internet-based training, several of the executives and managers that I was dealing with on a prototype basis said to me, "Ron, I'd sure like to know before the students took a class whether it would be beneficial for me to invest in them to take the class at all." As some of you know, we have pre-tests with every one of our classes, 10 questions, multiple choice. There's no grading. We just want to know where you are before you start the learning process. And then a final assessment where there's 20 multiple choice questions, but we require you to achieve an 80% score, get 16 of them or more right in order to pass. Now, we're not totally brutal. We give everybody the opportunity to take the assessment 3 times. And if you don't make it on the 3rd time, people call us and say, well, we had a problem and blah, blah, and we open it up for them again. What we were finding is a lot of people come in and take the class because the boss told them to. They see that there's an assessment at the back end, so they go right to the assessment. I know this stuff, I know my job, don't worry about it, let me just go right to the test and so don't waste my time. And so they'd go to the test, they take the 20 questions, and guess what? They didn't hit 80%. Well, darn, that means I got to go back and and do the class. Well, they did that, but they were rather bouncing around, what we call in the family here, skimming and scanning. They were racing through, and then they took the final assessment again. And lo and behold, they still didn't get 80%. Now we have a student who's engaged. Now we've got a student who wants to be able to understand so that they can pass the assessment. They don't want to have to go to the boss and tell them, gee, I didn't get it after the third try. Well, many of these fellows were saying, Ron, we need you to develop some means of evaluating people before they take a class. So we have 36 classes in each of the departments, parts, service, and selling and marketing. And in each class, we have 30 questions, 10 pre-test, and 20 final assessments. So that's 30 questions for 36 classes. That's 1,080 questions. What I did from that is I went through and isolated the job functions. We have 6 job functions in the parts department: leadership, the managers, supervisors, lead hands, whatever; purchasing, expediting, telephone sales, the parts office, warehousing, and inventory management. And we developed 90 multiple choice questions for each of those job functions. And people go through and they get a score. From our classroom training days, we had developed a 3-year program of 8 classes per year as a total process for management and supervision, all the leaders in the business, in the parts department, the service department, product support, sales, and marketing. Well, those classes were the core that took us to the 36 subject-specific classes that we have. And what we've done is, based on the skill set score, we've developed a learning path. The learning management software systems call it learning paths. We're going to come up with a different term for it ultimately, but educators use the characteristics of developing, beginning, intermediate, and advanced skills. Now, we're following the education criteria because we're aiming to be accredited as an education facility whereby we can issue credits for universities, vocational schools, any university around the world. All of our assessments today are in English, Spanish, and French. So wherever you are in the world with those 3 languages, you can take an assessment. The scores on the assessment follow the beginning, developing, intermediate, and advanced. And we have 8 classes we've identified for each of those skill levels that will fill in the gaps that allow you to progress through the different skill levels. So we built the assessments. They're all up there, and people have been taking them. Several hundred people have taken these assessments, and we found them to be very beneficial. In a blog we wrote when we updated our website back last September, we explained that the assessments should be used for hiring people. It's very difficult to determine whether somebody knows what the skills are on the job in an interview. I used to say to people, look, you can fool me very easily. You can fool me for 3 months. You can fool me for 6 months. That's also why I wanted to have a probationary period of 12 months. The odds of you being able to fool me for 12 months are very, very low. So we have these skill levels that we're using for hiring. We have the skill levels we recommend that you use to evaluate your employees with a performance review on an annual basis. Sonia Law wrote a blog a couple of weeks ago on the benefit of the annual year-end review. It was a very insightful article, and if you haven't read it, you should go backwards and read it. So we have you using the skill assessments for your hiring. We have you using your skill assessments for performance reviews on an annual basis. We also would like you to use the skill assessments to be able to place the employee properly in a wage and salary scale so that they have the appropriate pay for the appropriate skills. And finally, I believe, and you've heard me say this over the years and seen me write it, I believe that every employee should have a career path. There should be a path that they can progress through if they so choose, where they can develop their skills and grow in responsibility in the company. Our skill assessments are a very valuable tool for you to be able to utilize. I hope you'll have a little bit more of a look. Go to the skills assessment tab at the top of the page or the blue button down at the bottom of our website. that asks you to go look at assessments. I think you'll find the time to be very valuable. Thanks for your time this afternoon. I'll see you next time.